Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of the movie Hobbs and Shaw. And I enjoyed this movie, but I enjoyed it like the action movie that it is. Most of it is the plot demands most of these things to happen for these set pieces to occur. So it doesn't really have the best kind of structured plot. I mean, there's some interesting things in there trying to kind of get into the family dynamics of Hobbs and Shaw and seeing how they kind of work together. But it's mainly there just to facilitate kick-ass action set pieces. And they're decent, they're pretty good. Only thing is, its runtime is a little bit longer than it needs to be. And certain things happen that you're like, really? Is that kind of the most effective use of time? Hmm. So we start off and we see that this group of MI6 people are trying to go after something, and they're able to take down this group really effectively, and they supposedly have this virus secured. But then in comes in Idris Elba's character and pretty much wrecks their shit. He's got all this kind of cybernetic shit going on and just pretty much decimates them. I really do like Idris Elba in this kind of villain role, but the thing is, he is given an interesting backstory, but he's not given time to like develop anything with it. It's just very surface level things. Now, granted, you usually want a good balance of action and plot when you're doing an action movie. You don't want to get too plot heavy where people get bored, but you don't want to get so action heavy that it's like, why is this even occurring and how did this happen? It kind of tends to slide onto the more safer option of doing action that kind of like, So he's just kind of whooping ass, but there's one woman that survives, and we find out later that it's Hattie Shaw, and she injects herself with the virus thing, which, since we don't know what's going on with the virus at first, seems like a mental fucking proposition to do, but here we go. And then we go and we have a pretty kind of cool scene, well, couple of scenes, as we see how Hobbs and Shaw handle their different kind of styles of trying to gather information and all that. And how they start their days and just, it's a nice little window into their life. But that's about as much as it gets in there, as they're both trying to find some black market kind of deals. However, it divulges to going to Hobbs, having breakfast with his daughter, which was kind of nice before, surprise, surprise, Ryan Reynolds shows up as Agent Locke of the CIA, and of course brings him that the virus Snowflake has been taken and that it liquefies your insides, and that this really needs to be taken care of. And of course, we get another CIA operative doing the same thing for Shaw. And of course, he had visited his mother and everything, and she kind of just is there to bring more of his family element into it. Family, of course, is still a big, important central theme here, as we see as Hobbs' daughter is asking about like his family tree and his brother and all that kind of stuff, and his family in Samoa. But he kind of shuts that down and says like the most important ones are here and all that, and just kind of brushes it aside for the moment. So he goes off to try and find Hattie Shaw, and he of course doesn't know that he's related to Deckard. And Deckard, of course, does his own thing. They kind of get brought together, and they're like, no, I'm not working with you. You're an asshole. They just clash, mainly because they're the two kind of, they're pretty much the same, because Deckard Shaw's pretty much been framed for all the kind of stuff that he's been doing, even though he has been forced to do horrible shit. And it is still kind of problematic that he killed Han, and people are still kind of okay with that. And I understand the circumstances, but I'd be like, And Hobbs just really doesn't like him. It's mainly just them kind of butting heads. And I don't mind that. I just wish there was a little bit more in that, because I wish that it had been more explored of why they butt heads so much, because it's just, of course, still kind of the surface level going on there. But they go their separate ways. Deckard is able to find his sister's hideout, and Hobbs is able to kind of find her but they get into kind of a fight, and he is still able to capture her, and they have their kind of interrogation scene. He's like, hey, listen, you're not a killer. Otherwise, you would have been fighting to kill me. You were fighting to run away. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's kind of cool seeing Hobbs doing his kind of thing. But he gets a call from his daughter, goes out. She gets a random newbie CIA dude and pretty much wrecks his ass. And then, of course, that's when Shaw comes in, lays down the information that that's his sister and all that. And before they can get really much into it else, Brixton comes in, Idris Elba's character, and pretty much tries and take the sister. Then we get a cool action sequence as they're rappelling down the side of a building. Deckard is in an elevator, and Hobbs is just pretty much falling like a mountain of man meat down the side of the building, beating all kinds of ass along the way. But they get down to the street level, and they find out that Brixton is not to really be fucked with. He's able to dodge their attacks pretty easily, and it takes him like pretty much flipping a car onto his ass before they're able to take Shaw's car. And they have a kind of nice driving sequence. It doesn't get too long or too boring. They're able to kind of vary it up at least a little bit before Idris Elba kind of gets smacked into a bus, and they're able to kind of get away. And they're like, okay, what do we need to do with this? Oh, how about we try and extract it? So let's find the professor, who, incidentally enough, is in London, where they're at, and, of course, Brixton's character has decided, hey, let's do an immediate thing and make them terrorists. So, of course, Hobbs and Shaw are pretty much on the terrorist watch list, and they have to watch out where they're going. They hook up with the professor. He's like, listen, there's two options. We either kill you or we extract it from you, because since it hasn't been configured, once the capsules break inside of you, you'll die, it'll go airborne, and we're all fucked. And we go on. And while this is going on, we see that Brixton is part of this shadowy organization that wants to save humanity with cybernetics and enhancements, and wants to use this virus to kill off all the weak on the world and get everything kind of back on track. Again, still kind of surface level, but interesting lore. I'm a lore kind of guy, and I'm always, whenever I see something like this, I understand the movie's got to balance the effect of showing us something and making sure that the plot makes sense, and then saving things for later. This, I'm just like, okay. And Brixton kind of buys into it because Shaw, he's got hit. We learned in the fight in the building that Shaw had betrayed him and put a bullet in his head because he wanted him to be part of the technocult thing. At least that's kind of what I got from it. There's some parts where certain dialogue kind of got drowned out for some reason, or it like moved too fast, and it's like, okay, let's continue on. But that's the information that they get from him, and the only way to extract the virus is to get into this place's headquarters and take it. So they have to figure out how to do that. They go off to Russia to meet one of Shaw's acquaintances to try and get gear and all that. We get a funny scene in an elevator where Kevin Hart makes a cameo appearance and also helps them later on as an air marshal. It was random, but it was funny enough. I'm just like, okay, that's kind of weird, but I can see since they were in that CIA movie. Yeah, alright. But, before they got on the plane, there was a thing with, where Shaw pretty much played a prank on Hobbs. That becomes important later on in one of the post-credit scenes. We get to Russia. Chick helps him out, hooks him up. Hattie is pretty much waxing about, you guys should just pretty much kill me or whatnot. Like, hey, no problem. I was like, yeah, we'll help you out. You're good. And they go off. They decide to pull what they call a Mick Jagger, where Hattie is going to be thrown into there and pretty much be the distraction while Hobbs and Shaw go and try and get like everything kind of set up and make sure that they can blow up the headquarters, which is in the Ukraine. This becomes important when you start thinking about timeline-wise. She's got like 40-some hours, give or take, when she was told about what's going on with the capsules. So they go and do that. She's pretty much getting set up to have the capsules extracted. And then Hobbs and Shaw go through do their awesome action scene where we get one big dude that's bigger than The Rock, which I'm always kind of interested in because usually in action movies, you always have to find a dude that is bigger than one of your heroes. And in this case, The Rock is pretty much usually that guy that you would get, especially with like Jason Statham. So they did find one, and he just punched him out, and Statham had to go through the other door and do all this stuff to try and get it open, and they do, and Brixton's just there. Strap him in, and evidently the head dude wants to try and turn them to the cause. He tries, doesn't really work. Hattie is able to kind of like go around, and they get into it, and they start fighting and brawling. They're able to get the machine. Things start blowing up, and they start escaping, but as they're escaping, the machine is broken, and Hattie's like, all right then, you guys gotta kill me, and I was like, wait a minute, I got an idea. We can get to a place that's off the grid. And they go to Samoa, to his family, because his brother's a mechanic. Yes, his brother is a mechanic, or deals with kind of machinery, but we don't know to what effect it would be even comparable to a device that extracts shit from your body and makes sure you don't die from it. I understand certain levels of suspension of disbelief. This was just like, okay. Mind you also, this is from the Ukraine to Samoa, time-wise, and not granted, they did get help from the air marshal, and he's like, alright, fine, and he's able to get to the house, and we find out that he hasn't been back there because he has dishonored the family somehow, but his mother's like, screw all you people, help your brother out, and we find out that his father was into like boosting cars and everything, and was bringing in the family to use as a crew, and wouldn't have cared if somebody died, so Hobbs turned him in, and that's why everybody's pissed off. But you find out that you go in, and his whole family is running a legitimate custom shop now. So, okay, cool, we get some cars and everything. I'm like, alright, well, we'll see how this goes. And he's able to fix it, set it up that there's enough time to spare. It'll take 30 minutes to extract it, but Brixton's already going with all of his soldiers and all that, and augmented and getting even more augmented by the director. It's like, okay, interesting. And the thing is, we learned that the weapons have activation chips, and that Hattie is going to hack into them to stop them for a little bit, because they have no guns, and all they've got are kind of traditional Samoan weaponry. Yep. So, Brixton comes in, and their traps are laid out pretty cool. You get some nice explosions and everything, and some good fights. We get a long chase, eventually, where Brixton is able to capture Hattie, as she has, for some odd reason, been able to make the machine that can extract these capsules mobile by putting it on her back, and takes her in a helicopter. We get a chase sequence with that, as Hobbs and Shaw use, like, this souped-up hot rod tow truck to get onto it, and of course they got a fucking, like, Lego car with other cars to make sure the helicopter doesn't get away. It's kind of weird and ridiculous to say, and it's somewhat cooler to see, but you're like, oh god. It kind of goes on too long, and it's like, alright, fine, and eventually the copter crashes, and we get the cool fight scene with Hobbs, Shaw, and Brixton. And of course they're learning, okay, we have to work together to take this dude out. One of us is going to take a punch, one of us is going to give a punch, and they start just destroying him, and it works pretty well. It's a nice kind of fight sequence, though for some odd and inexplicable reason, it starts raining at this point, and you're just like, okay. Makes it just a little bit more difficult to see, and it's like, okay, fine. But Hattie is able to get everything extracted from her, and they do this really bad pile driver to Brixton, and he's just kind of like defeated. So is the rest of his soldiers, and everything's happy hunky-dory except that the director decides to decommission Brixton. He gets killed, and like by a push of a button, and falls off, and everybody's like, yay, we're good. And then we get into the credit scenes as we see that Hobbs brings his daughter to his family in Samoa, and they kind of visit, and everything's kind of better on that end. Hattie and Decker go to visit their mother, and they only give her a cake that she had like requested C for, so we're assuming that she had escaped from prison. We see that Locke is dealing with another situation, Ryan Reynolds' character, and has called Hobbs, and he'd been making a point of like doing shit with Game of Thrones throughout this whole movie, which was kind of funny. And he had thought he was talking with Hobbs, but he was actually talking with his daughter because, yeah, Snowflake is secure, but there's evidently another virus that, like, melts off your outsides. And then he's messing around with Hobbs, and then we get to another credit scene where Hobbs gets Deckard payback for the trick that he'd done in the airport by calling the cops on him in London. And then evidently there was another end credit scene that I didn't see where Locke was dealing with another contingent that was trying to attack him and said that it was easier to stab a person with a brick than he thought. And I think we've been kind of led to believe that Locke could potentially be the shadowy director. It could be hinted at. We'll have to see how that works out. But overall, I enjoyed this film because I went in knowing it was going to be more of an action movie. I just wish that it had a better kind of plot structure and that the plot didn't demand that these certain set pieces happen, and instead that they'd happened organically. It just felt like the bare minimum was connected to make sure that each certain set piece happened the way it needed to, and that more kind of depth were kind of explored with like the Shaw family and the Hobbs family, because I'm a brother, and seeing the brother and sister dynamic with Hattie and Deckard was kind of nice because she learned that her brother was pretty much framed for going rogue and that she had lost all this time with him because she thought he was a criminal. And Hobbs, of course, with whole family drama in Samoa, but it's just surface level kind of stuff. I mean, it goes a little bit down, but like not too deep. It would have been better to kind of see a little bit more of that and a little bit more of Hobbs and Shaw's kind of relationship going a little bit into more depth as well, because I do like buddy cop kind of things like this. I just kind of like it to get more depth, kind of Lethal Weapon, like Riggs and Murtaugh and all that kind of stuff. So, those are my opinions on the movie. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.